more for you, you feel it. You know it. This is your life, and it's time to go from contender to champion. This is the show. John Madsen.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is the show. So I got a great episode for you today. We're going to talk about some commonalities of what I saw in some of the greatest athletes in the world and my perception or my philosophy right now on what made them so great. And one of the reasons, one of the things that they did, I can just tell you right now, I probably did maybe a dozen times in my whole career that I can remember. And it's precisely the thing that didn't allow me to play at my highest potential. Now, why is that important? We're going to apply that to what you're doing in business. We're going to apply that to what you're doing in fitness. We're going to apply that to whatever you want to do. There's some blockages that are there that if I can help you just become aware of them, you're going to have movement. Now, obviously, sometimes people want to join my program or join me. And if you do want to see what that looks like, just head on over to johnmadsen.com. Probably the tab you want to click is Athletic AF CEO Project right now. And that gives you an idea into my world. But for all of you who are just listeners, I want to really bring some awareness into your life on certain things that I almost have an epiphany about sometimes. And I share on this podcast because, once again, exactly what I'm talking about, what I'm going to talk about in a second, applies to me saying this right now. Some of the athletes, if I think about Randy Moss or, I always think of Randy Moss because he was such an elite athlete. But if you think about all the other athletes right now, or you even think about the NBA when I was growing up with Jordan and Pippen and Malone and Stockton and all of these dynamic duos that seemed to be in the NBA at the same time, was really awesome to watch. But there's this separation between the really, really great ones and then the marginal players. And it would surprise you. It may surprise you. Maybe you have no idea. It may have even surprised me that most of the time, the actual ability or talent wasn't that different from some lesser players who may not have ever gotten any stardom. It's like a razor edge different. I've talked about this on the show, that it literally comes down to the mindset. But what mechanism of the mindset? That's where we're going to dive in today, because everyone can say, like, look, it's more mindset than it is talent. But what specifically in those players' minds were they doing that other players weren't, that we can apply to our own businesses, to our own whatever we want to apply it to, and see the difference right away? That's where I want to go with this episode. And it's going to be powerful when I point these things out, because you probably have never thought of it like this. The best athletes in the world are not playing for the people in the stands. The best athletes in the world are not playing for the coaches on the sideline. The best players in the world are not even playing really or paying attention to the guys on the other team. The best players in the world are out there in the moment. And they're not thinking about all the other stuff that all the other players are thinking about. They're zoned in. A lot of players call this a zone. A lot of people call this a zone. You could call it flow state. There's books written about it, and there's science about it. There's research on it. But the reality is, we don't really need to make it that difficult. As an athlete, I felt it. I felt the moments where it didn't matter who I was up against. It didn't matter what team we were playing, if they were ranked 5th or 10th or not ranked at all. It didn't matter if there was 50,000 people in the stands or 100,000. It didn't matter if the game was on national television or it wasn't televised at all. It didn't matter what my coach was thinking. I was out there and I was fucking balling. Nothing mattered. Slow motion, zone. If you were an athlete, you probably have felt like this. If you're in business, you've probably felt flow state too. Maybe you're a writer, and when you write, you just hit flow sometimes. In this podcast, if you guys listen enough, you can tell once I'm zoned in that I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just flowing. Singers do this, performers do this, entertainers do this, athletes do it, business people do it. All of us can experience flow or the zone. It's an altered state, right? It's an altered state. And people chase this feeling because once you've experienced it, it's magic. And all of your best stuff usually comes from this state. So why am I talking about this now? The thing that's holding you back, that you won't acknowledge, that I've said before, I've probably said a million times, but the thing that has allowed me to ascend to levels that I can only try to articulate to you, and I'm just beginning, is this idea that I'm not doing it for you. I hate to break it to you. I'm not doing it for my wife. I'm not doing it for anybody. I'm doing what I do in the moment for me. I'm not concerned whether you think this podcast sucks or you think it's great. I'm not concerned whether you're going to share it or you're never going to listen to it again, or I'm not concerned about the people who have never heard of it or are never going to hear of it. It doesn't matter. I was just sharing a Facebook Live, and I pulled out a microphone that I started this shit with. And I showed them. Some of you guys have listened to every episode. We're at like 150 something at the time of this episode. I started from episode 0 by plugging the mic into my phone and closing my doors in the truck and just speaking about whatever popped into my brain. And if you listen to the earlier episodes, you can see, or you felt, if you've been one from the start, the transition. I'm not saying I'm great. I'm just saying that I'm way better at 155 than I was at 0. And you guys obviously can hear that. Sometimes I get people who just find out about me and they're like, John, I'm listening to all your episodes. I started back as far as iTunes could go. I'm like, bro, that's fun. That's also, side note, a funny way to do it, because that's John 2 years ago, right? If I want to study someone, I want to study their latest work because their thoughts have probably changed on some stuff. And that's good. That means there's progression. So I would urge you, unless you run out of all the shows, definitely go back. But if you're brand new and this is the first episode you listen to, don't go clear back to the beginning. Go, get all the new episodes and then go back linearly instead of jumping to the first. Unless you just want to, so maybe you're a linear thinker and you want to go to the beginning to now. That's fine too. Listen however you want to listen. Point is, I started how I started. I wasn't concerned with having 100,000 downloads or 1 million downloads or 10 million downloads a month. I wasn't concerned with comparing myself to Tony Robbins or Aubrey Marcus or Tim Ferriss or Lewis Howes or anybody. I'm not concerned. I'm doing it for me, right? And the podcast has been very, very successful because I wasn't doing it for the fans. I wasn't doing it for the people in the stands. I wasn't doing it for the coaches. I was just doing it for me. Think about this. The people who come into my world, the people who direct message me and say, John, your podcast hit me. Like, it just hit me. I've heard it said before, but it hit me. And the thing that it hit, the reason that it hit me is it was authentic. I felt the authenticity. And I said, awesome. Because I'm just being me, right? I'm not trying to perform up or down to anybody. Think about this when you write, like if you're out there and you're like, I want to write a book, right? And I say that because I'm in the process of writing a book, and I stopped. I've wanted to do this for so long, but I've never quite finished it because in my head, I was thinking about it wrong. I was always concerned about the reader. I was always concerned about whether someone would like it or not. So I can never write the book. But now I'm going to get the book out in the next 6 months. And guess what? The reason I was able to do it is because I gave up on caring about the perception of you or any other person. And I love you guys, but I just don't care, right? And if you guys have seen or followed me on social media and you're a male and you're 35 years old to 60 years old, you probably have seen some of my Facebook advertising. And the reason you've seen it is because I put a lot of money behind it. And if you've seen it and you've noticed it, or if you haven't yet and one pops up, you literally can go down to the comments and you can see a bunch of haters. You can see people saying, John, you're too skinny. Like, you don't even look like a fitness professional. And then right below it, you're going to see guys that are like, John's on steroids, PEDs, or he's on test. Or you're going to say like, this is a scam, or whatever is there. Right. And here's my point. I'm never going to, I had this epiphany one day where I was like, I can't please everybody. I can't please everybody. I want to be a likable person. I have a likable personality. If you were ever to meet me in person, I'm respectful, but I'm authentic, right? And before, I would always be playing to the other person in conversation. I would be playing to the other person in business dealings. I'd be playing to the other person in all this stuff. Now I'm very aware. I use information about the other person if I want to influence a certain outcome. I'm very trained in that. However, the authenticity that you're going to get is just because I literally go into the situations and I'm unconcerned. I'm neutral to the fact that you might like me and you might not like me. Now, more people, I would like to think that more people than not like me, but here's the thing. I'm neutral to it. So that means that if you love the podcast and you share it and you're, just a raving fan, which I'd love for you to be. And if you are one, definitely share it, right? But you could tell me how great I am, and I'm going to take that compliment and thank you for sharing it. But I'm still going to be neutral to it, because if I take praise and I build my ego based on all the praise, then when all the haters come out and they say what they're going to hate, then I got to take them serious too. I can't have one without the other. If I care about an opinion, I got to care about it whether it's good or bad. So the magic is being neutral. The haters don't faze me. The people who love me, I'm thankful for, but I'm not going to let it boost this ego up. That's a really hard thing for people to do. And if you're still out there and you're wondering like, oh, that's so right. Now, how do I apply this to my life or what I'm trying to do? This is what I want you to think about. The thing that's holding you back right now, the thing that deep down, if you were really to get quiet about, would kind of jump out at you and it kind of like tug on your heartstrings a little bit. The thing that you kind of reveals itself sometimes, but then you want to sweep it right under the rug and you don't really want to go there. You want to put that skeleton in the closet and just kind of like shut it because it's scary, right? The thing that you know you should do but can't do, the thing that kind of peeks at you sometimes, the only reason you don't do it, the only reason you don't jump in, maybe it's just getting into the most phenomenal shape of your life, right? Maybe it's just like, I'm going to go for it because I deserve it, but there's still something holding you back. Or maybe it's starting the business, or maybe it's breaking up in a terrible relationship, but it's the thing that's like going to be hard that you don't really want to do. All of it is not this fear that you might fail, and it's not this fear that you might succeed. All of it is you're concerned about another person's perception of that failure, of that hurt, of that success. Here's a story that will illustrate this. I know you guys can probably think back to a time when you were like in junior high school, right? When you had a crush, or, there was a really, really beautiful looking girl that you just liked, right? And I was a shy kid. So I was a kid who, I guess I was shy. Like, I didn't like dances. I liked to go, but I just was so concerned that, I look like an idiot on the dance floor, right? So I found my home on the basketball court or something. But imagine a time, high school, junior high, when there was a person you really wanted to say hello to, right? I remember, and interestingly enough, we probably all did this unless I'm weird. There's patterns when, certain days you have certain periods and people would walk in the same, they'd have the same route to their next class. And so you start to recognize like, this girl is always walking here between third and fourth period. I'm going to, even if it's kind of out of my way, like I'm going to go in this hallway, right? And today I had this conversation in my head and I was like, I'm going to say hi today. And you kind of play out this scenario. It happens really fast. It's not like you sit there and think about it forever, but you have like these glimpses of like, she walks by, you walk by and you say hi and you smile and it's like, that felt good, right? Imagine this happening And then every day, like you go to say hi, but like something would come up. She would turn the wrong way and like talk to her friend or, you know, whatever happened. And you have all these stories about why you didn't say hi that day. And then one day you're like, you know what? This is the day. I have courage. You know, I had a good breakfast of champions. Like today's the day I'm going to say hi to this girl. And you're walking by and she's with all of her friends. Right? She's with all of their friends and say they're cheerleaders or something and they're, you know, really pretty girls and some really pretty girls who weren't cheerleaders and are just a bunch of good looking people right there. And right when you were to open your mouth, you stepped on your other shoelace and you tripped and fell. Imagine that, right? Maybe you've had a like terrifying moment before where you were just like so embarrassed. The point I'm trying to make is it wasn't the fall. You didn't go to the hospital. You didn't probably even scuff your knee. Your books probably fell out of your hands and your pen scattered everywhere and everybody saw. It wasn't the fall that hurt. It was the thought that what all those other people, that girl that you really liked, saw in her perception of you in that moment, that you were clumsy or that you were stupid or that you were dumb or that that was really funny, right? It could have just been funny, but you make up all these stories about what the person thought or, oh my God, like now you can never talk to that girl. Never. Now, instead of going on that route and you go by her the next day and try to say hi to her, guess what you do? You literally want to hide and disappear. You don't go that way anymore. You go around the other way. In fact, you never want her to see you again. You start disappearing. Now think about in your life, how many times because of a perceived failure on your part, you stop going for it. You never say hi again. I'm not just talking about relationships. Hopefully you guys follow this metaphor. You start going out of your way never to try again. You start going out of your way never to try fitness again. You start, in fact, making up stories and going into straight denial about how you don't need it, right? Even though you look in the mirror and you see that shit. Or maybe you go even further and you're like, you know what? I don't need to be in great shape. That's not happiness. I don't need a six-pack, John. You can have your six-pack. I don't need it. That's not happiness. Motherfucker, I didn't say it was happiness either. I have happiness and a six-pack, right? You're the one equating it. Same thing with money. John, I saw that you bought the Bentley or the G-Wagon. You can have that, man. I don't need that. That's not happiness. I never said it was either. I just said I have the cars and it's fun as fuck to drive them and I'm happy as fuck too. Right? So those stories that you are constructing are not true. And it's the denial, though, that is really when it gets scary. Because then you wake up at 30 or 35 or 40, 45, 50, whenever it is, 25. And that little flame that you had in your heart from the moment you were born, that everything that's in all of us, the realness to that we can be and do and have whatever we want, and we can become whatever we want to become, and we can absolutely change and influence as many people as we want to. That flame gets dimmer and dimmer every time something like that happens in the hallway. Every time you perceive something as a failure. Every single time it dims itself. And then before you know it, you wake up, like I said, at 25, 30, 35, 40, and you never try again. In fact, you run the other direction. Why? Because you're holding on to the stories of the perceived failure of the past. Now, here's where it gets tricky, and this is why I'm going to tie it back to the greatest athletes in the world. Hopefully you follow. If you like this episode, please share it because this is huge. It's not the actual fall that you cared about. It was the perception of the other people's opinion. Now, so it's not your failures that you're really terrified of. It's not the fact that you want to start the business and it might fail or you might run out of money, right? It's the fact that the people closest to you, your spouse, your husband, it's not the fact that you might start a fitness program and not get the result. That's the scary part. It's that the people you care about, their opinions, that maybe you shake your head and you're like, no, I don't give a fuck. But you do. Because if you didn't, you'd already be doing it. Because you do care. Because it's not the thing that actually hurts. See, the one thing that I was really good at is that I inherently just kept trying, meaning never played high school football, decided to walk on to a college team. It was embarrassing. I didn't know the terminology. I was really shitty at football. And that was like, that hurt, right? Somehow I just kept going and somehow I succeeded wildly. Now, I too have a lot of failures that I could look back at and hang on to, but I choose not to. See, my perception, I choose all the things that I won at and I focus on those. In fact, I write them down every day. I glorify those things. And by glorifying them and focusing on them, I feel like a winner. And because I feel like a winner, I start attracting more winning. When everybody else, right, the people who are struggling, they're focused on their failures. They're glorifying their failures. Because they're focusing on it, they walk around most of the day and they feel like a failure. Because they feel like a failure, they act like a failure and they get more failure. See how that goes? Changing your perception and your focus is everything. That's everything to everything, right? Going back to the fact that I stated in the beginning, if you're not playing for the people in the stands, if you're not playing for the girls in the hallway, if you're not playing for your coaches, if you're not playing for your spouse, if you're not playing for any of them, and you're trying to become the best you possible, it doesn't matter how many times you fail if you learn from it and you just keep going, right? And because I learned that and finally like broke through 2 years ago, I was so concerned about what other people thought of my success or failure. And you can't truly get into the zone. You can't truly get into that flow state of your life where you're playing this game for you, because God damn it, there's only one life, right? This is it. This is not a dress rehearsal. So you could go your whole life and wake up and be on a rocking chair at 90 years old, and you're going to think to yourself like, you know what? I wish I would have taken that shot. I wish I would have seen what I was capable of. I wish I wouldn't have just walked through life and been 50 pounds overweight my whole life and never experienced, going to a vacation and feeling fucking proud of myself. I wish I would have taken the shot. I wish I would have felt those feelings. Or on the other hand, you're in the rocking chair and you have a great smile on your face and you reminisce about all the damn times that you literally took the risk, that you risked everything and you just went and you did it for you. See, a lot of people would call that selfish. And I'm not saying like you do your own life and you don't care about your friends or your family or your wife or anything. See, my thing is this. I'm going to become the greatest version of myself possible. Somebody asked me what my end goal was. End goal is not 10% body fat. End goal is not abs. End goal is not a Bentley. End goal is not a house. End goal is not 10 million. End goal, you guys got it all wrong. The end goal is to see what type of person I'm capable of becoming and progressing. That's it. There is no end. And because I do that and I feel so certain in my heart and I feel so proud and I can be neutral to the opinions of other people. I can play for me and not the people in the stands, not the critics, not the fans, just me. It makes everybody around me better. It makes this message authentic. It makes my interactions with people authentic and real. I'm not playing out a play. I'm living my life in the moment. That's what it's all about. So I want you to think about that in your businesses and your fitness and everything. Like, who are you playing for? Who are you writing for? Who are you singing for? Who are you being an athlete for? Who are you doing this podcast for? Who are you doing it for? As soon as you stop caring about the perceptions of all the wrong people and you fill your own cup up, magic happens.
Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode of The Show with John Madsen. The greatest compliment that you could give us is liking, loving, and sharing this episode with all of your friends. So please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review, and then share it online with everyone that you know. Make sure to tag John as well. He loves to hear from listeners of the show. The links for all of his socials and iTunes are in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to engage John for anything related to his coaching, consulting, or programs, please visit johnmadsen.com for everything you'd need to know on how to engage with John offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is the show.